Another Thunder Thursday here at the Oklahoma Newsroom. I'm here with part of our Thunder coverage team. And we're also joined by part of our Thunder coverage team. We'll get to that in just a second. Here in studio, columnist Barry Trammell, Thunder beat writer Brett Dawson, and on the road, we believe in the state of Texas, is Eric Horn, beat writer. Eric, are you in Texas?
I'm deep in the heart. I'm in Houston. I'm looking out on Main Street, Houston.
There is a Main Street in Houston? I was unaware of this. Wow, okay. I've already learned something in this hangout. I appreciate that. Hey, guys, let's get started with Russell Westbrook, probably how we should start pretty much every Thunder Thursday. But, Eric, you were in the building last night there in Charlotte when Russell Westbrook drew a technical. He's got a little bit of a run of technicals here recently, but this one was a bit, I think we termed it bizarre today in the paper, Eric, but you saw it up close and personal. Walk us through what happened and then the reaction to all of this.
Well, timeout. Russell Westbrook's walking to the side. He's got the ball. I had about 3 minutes left in the first quarter, and he'd taken some drives and not gotten a lot of calls, and you could see that the frustration was building with him. But he happens to have the ball in his hands, and he throws it toward the baseline. And in the oddest thing I've ever seen in terms of a guy tossing a ball to a referee, it hits the referee square in the head. And then two other referees rush over. One of them gives him a tech. Russell goes into hysterics because he didn't mean to do it. It didn't look like he meant to do it. He threw his hands up immediately when he threw the ball. But it became like the scene of the night. Russell just flipping and really being just emotional about the entire incident. At one point he had to go to the back with Mo Cheeks, who had to settle him down. He came back and he was more calm, but you could see there was still some frustration in his mind. But he didn't put up much of a verbal fight with the rest of the night. He had a couple little things, but other than that, another strange technical from Russell Westbrook.
Well, and he had two technicals from past games rescinded yesterday and then picks up the quick one last night there in Charlotte. But, Brett, I think, the question sort of becomes Russell Westbrook's, I don't know if antics is the right word or what word we would ascribe to all this, but, really kind of having these moments of bad judgment, maybe, sort of these questionable technicals where it's not just what he's saying. He's doing some stuff that has to raise some questions. What's been your impression of this recent run with Westbrook?
Well, it's odd. I mean, I think some of it is the two in Memphis were really strange because it was two technical fouls arguing a play that was completely inconsequential, a play that meant nothing whether a ball hit the rim or not, in a game where they were underwater and sinking fast. They were in trouble in Memphis, and he gets kicked out of a game where they were really having a hard time. He had this situation in Portland early in the year, which was similar to this one, in that he threw the ball to a referee who either wasn't going where Westbrook thought or wasn't paying attention, and the ball kind of went into the stands. He didn't get a technical for that one because I think the officials understood he didn't mean to do it. But it does seem like it's just a little bit much. Sometimes I think he's getting a little frustrated. Maybe it's because they're not playing well. Maybe it's because of the load he has to carry. Whatever the reason, he's had some struggles. He's sort of taking it out on the referees, maybe. The NBA did rescind two of them, so he's got a little more cushion before he gets a suspension. But at some point, I think he has to tone down the act a little bit, not just to avoid getting suspended for a game and suspended for a game beyond that every two technicals, but also just because this is the leader of the team. This is the guy who's got to set a tone, and I think he's got to calm down a little bit.
Well, Barry, is it as simple as quit throwing the ball without looking where it's going after plays, or is this an outcropping of something deeper going on right now with Russell Westbrook?
Well, I mean, not throwing the ball in the direction of referees who aren't looking is a good place to start. However, I think generally the guys are right. I think Russell Westbrook is frustrated. They've had a good year so far, but they're not winning at the level he's accustomed to. Russell would get frustrated when they were winning big. So you can imagine how he's feeling now that the losses are coming a little more frequently. But clearly, he's got to tone it down. Brett is right. It doesn't matter if he meant to hit the guy in the head. If you fire a ball on a fairly even plane across a basketball court at people who aren't necessarily looking, bad things can happen. Mm-hmm. And if it's a referee, Russell's probably lucky it was a referee and not, say, a fan sitting in the front row who wasn't watching. So you can't do that. No reason to throw the ball. The refs will find the ball. If you drop it, if you roll it, whatever you do, the refs will find the ball. The game will eventually start up again with a basketball on the court. So you don't have to get it right to the guys in their hands immediately. They don't go looking for the ball. They don't care. Just drop the ball and go to the huddle.
Yeah.
Also, we know he's got good court vision, so maybe just make sure the guy's hands are up. Maybe make sure he's ready. You do it for Steven Adams.
Looking at you,
do it
perhaps?
for the officials.
Yeah, right. Good call. You know, guys, I think when we've sort of talked about this in different ways throughout the first few weeks of this season, you know, Russell Westbrook, getting him help, getting him assistance, you know, is there a trade in the offing to maybe help? You know, I think that the question when the season started, one of the questions was, you know, how would he fare you know, not having a ton of support behind him, not having a ton of great players necessarily. You know, then we saw the injury to Oladipo. Losing him for a while was really a painful thing. Brett, does this sort of trend give us any more indication of what the Thunder might be looking to do before the trading deadline? Do you feel like this may push them to something?
I don't know, because I think what we're seeing happen right now was going to happen. The schedule was going to get tougher, and whatever cushion they had, they were really going to need, because they were going to run into some games, some road games. They're in that stretch now where things were going to get tougher, and we talked about this last week. We'll see how Russell Westbrook kind of handles that now that he's in these situations where they're going to lose some games, they're going to be overmatched by some teams. I talked to him about this stretch, and he said the whole thing is it doesn't matter if a team is better than you, and he used the word better, which I was surprised he would concede anybody is better than them, because he's a competitor. He doesn't normally think that way. But they understand there's going to be some teams that are with better records, some teams that are favored to beat them. How he reacts to what these teams throw at him is going to say a lot, I think, about just sort of where he is mentally. We don't know yet. He's been great so far. He's played spectacularly. But as things get tougher, we're going to learn more about him. We're going to learn more about the team. I don't know whether it changes the way they view the roster necessarily, because, again, this is something they knew was going to happen. I don't think this is any shock that they're going to start losing some of these games.
Right. Hey, Eric, you and Brett have obviously seen, you know, every one of these games. One or the two of you has been in every game. Do you get a sense of how this is affecting the rest of the guys in that locker room, Eric? Because, you know, as Brett mentioned, you know, there was a thought, okay, there's going to be tough times, but to see Russell Westbrook, the leader of this team, have these frustrations, what's your feeling about sort of the trickle down, if you will, around that locker room?
Well, I think in the locker room, after games, I don't think there's much of any somberness or difference from when, you know, they would normally lose a game or anything. But, you know, it's interesting just seeing some of the animation on their faces last night, and it might be a one-off thing, but, you know, the Hornets shot 49 free throws last night. The Thunder shot less than half that. They shot 23. And you could see it in Steven Adams' face. You could see it in Victor Oladipo and in Enes Kanter. These guys were all frustrated and animated about the way that game was going. And I don't think that necessarily stems from Russell Westbrook, but Russell Westbrook is always pretty clear about the frustration that he has when it comes to calls not going his way. And you know, he had 13 free foul shots last night. Definitely should have gotten more. I mean, he got clobbered by Roy Hibbert on one drive, and Hibbert fell on top of him. So, you know, it's going to be interesting to see how the Thunder goes throughout the rest of this season in terms of reacting to these plays and if they can continue to keep their composure, because as we've said time and time again, this schedule's not getting any easier.
Yeah, you know, you're right. You know, Bear, I think about, I don't want to get fallen on by Roy Hibbert anytime soon. I understand the frustration of Westbrook and some of these other guys, but, you know, these technicals and some of the reactions, we making too much out of it, not enough out of it? What do you think about, I mean, everything that Russell Westbrook does is under a microscope this year. There is zero doubt about that. But what about just sort of these technicals and this most recent behavior?
Well, I don't think it's a major problem, because, frankly, the Thunder has thrived in years past with Russell getting into the double digits and technicals and playing frustrated and staying frustrated a good chunk of the time. What I think's interesting, though, is in the post-Durant era, where the Thunder is not a title team, playoff team, but not a title team, how much does the Russell energy and the Russell persona affect the team pro work on? Maybe they feed off the negative energy that Russell can bring to a ball game. But it seems to me that some of his positive energy, when we saw the new and improved Russ earlier in the year, seemed like they fed off that pretty well too. So The things I know about technicals is sometimes they can help stem momentum. Sometimes they can change the course of a game. A lot of times they give the other team 1 point. And, the Thunder can use every point it can get. So just from a strictly scoreboard standpoint, I would recommend limiting the technicals, especially if you're going to put Charlotte on the line 49 times anyway.
Yeah, good point. Hey, guys, as we're talking about, what Eric said, the frustration level that is out there amongst the whole team, and then you look at Westbrook in specific, it leads us to our next subject, which is this game tonight against the Rockets. Kind of a big game going up against James Harden and that group down in Houston. Eric, where you are, this was going to be a tough game anyway. Thunder coming off a back-to-back. It's a back-to-back situation, 2 road games. Rockets are on 2 days rest. Does what we saw last night in that frustration roll over into tonight, or does the Thunder have some sort of switch it can flip, Eric, and kind of turn the page and move into what is a really important game tonight?
I don't think it's a switch necessarily, but I think they are going to be ready and they have to play this game. They typically get up to play the Rockets regardless. And it's going to be even more interesting to see if Patrick Beverley is going to be ready to go. He's got a wrist injury that he's been nursing, and he's missed the last couple of games for them. So it's going to be a situation where if he doesn't play, Russell Westbrook's going to have – he might have the edge on James Harden in this matchup. We've seen in the 2 matchups before that Andre Robertson has done a pretty good job of containing James Harden in terms of his scoring. Now, Harden has averaged about 12 assists against the Thunder in those 2 matchups, which the 2 teams have split. But to keep Harden contained in terms of his scoring, Andre Robertson's done a pretty good job these games. And if Houston doesn't have their defensive ace, then, the Thunder is going to be pretty amped up to go into this game. And they might have an advantage with Westbrook coming off of, the past couple of games being frustrated.
Yeah, it's an interesting dynamic. And Brett, you looked at some of the numbers for James Harden against the Thunder. I mean, it's striking. Yeah, his assists are pretty high, but when you look at a guy that's scoring it the way he has this year and the way he hasn't scored it against the Thunder, I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah, Eric mentioned the 12. I think it's about 12 and a half assists. He's averaging about 17 points. He's getting 8 rebounds. He's played well, but he shot about 26%, I think. I think it's 18% from three-point range. So they've done a really nice job on him, and so much of that is because they do have a guy like Robertson who can defend him one-on-one, and they don't have to bring a lot of help. You have help with Harden at any time. It's a team effort. But they can do a lot of things individually with Robertson that a lot of teams don't have the luxury of doing against Harden. That is really, really helpful.
Barry, we've seen a couple of matchups already between the Rockets and the Thunder with these 2 megastars and Harden and Westbrook going at it. But we really have yet to see, with that defense on Harden, we really haven't seen shot for shot or possession for possession. Is that a potential tonight, or does the Thunder have something figured out against Harden defensively that really could be a long-term solution against him?
Well, I don't know if they figured anything out. They do have a player that can sort of bother him, and a lot of teams don't have an Andre Robertson. So that's a good start. Now, conversely, a lot of teams don't have a Patrick Beverley either. Yeah. And so Russell, I'm not sitting here thinking Russell's going to go 12 for 21 and score 42 points. The Rockets make it tough on Russell. And what I find interesting anytime the Rockets play the Thunder is Russell's demeanor clearly is different for this game, because while he acts like he doesn't like anybody, it's no act when he's playing against Patrick Beverley. He really does not like Patrick Beverley. So it's going to be a fun game to watch. Always is. You got the history of the injury from 4 years ago, and then you got the new dynamic of Harden and Westbrook both going for history. So it's just going to be a fun game.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting. The first time the Rockets were here earlier this year, Harden made a point to say, "Oh, that stuff between Russell and Patrick, it's in the past. They've patched all that up." I'm not sure he really saw the way those two look at each other.
James is a man of peace. He wants everybody to get along. Harden's a great competitor, but he's actually, think about it. He never really does anything that no one ever gets mad at James Harden. There's nothing.
Oklahoma City's not mad at James Harden.
No, and when he plays, he just, he flops a little and he draws some tacky fouls that aren't really fouls. But in terms of his persona and his attitude, he's overflowing with the milk of human kindness. And then on the other side, you got Genghis Khan wanting to burn down the city that he's playing in. So it's a fantastic matchup.
I have this weird thought in my mind that the All-Star game is going to come, and Kevin Durant and Russell Westbrook are going to be sitting on opposite sides of the West locker room. And James Harden's going to be in the middle, and he's going to bring them both together and bring their hands together and just have them shake. And it's just going to be this peace offering. And James Harden is going to be the glue. He's going to be the glue to this peace offering. There will be peace. There will be peace in the Western Conference in the second half.
Eric the Red, here's what I see at the All-Star game. I see Russell Westbrook sitting on the Eastern Conference bench. That's what I see.
Guys, before we get off Westbrook and Harden, the run for the MVP, I mean, how much does this play in, Brett? I mean, a lot of basketball left to be played, but do these one-on-one matchups make a big difference when it comes to MVP voting?
They don't make a huge difference, I don't think, in terms of just individual games, individual matchups. I don't think a ton of people are going to look at their head-to-head stats against one another. I think what matters is Houston's been on a 60-win pace. In a year when there's not a lot of great teams in the league, they are emerging as a great team. That's really surprising. But I think great is relative. You've got two or three who are way ahead of everybody else, and Houston is kind of surprisingly in that next tier. So a win at Houston is really big, and wins are really big for Russell Westbrook as he tries to, lead this team and carry this team. He needs to stay around a 50-win pace, I think, to be a legitimate threat for that MVP candidacy, especially if Houston is going to get to 60 or 61 wins if it turns out that way. So I think every win against Houston matters much more so than just because you take one away from them and you get one more than their individual stats.
Yeah, and we talked about that early in the year. I think I wrote something about it before the Thunder started. They go play the Clippers, they go play the Warriors. We knew that there was going to be a lot of emotion around that Warriors game, but that Clippers win, I mean, those are the type of games that when you're Westbrook, you really need to have in your back pocket. And Eric, I mean, that if you look at this Rockets Thunder series as the season goes on, I mean, they've got a good chance if Westbrook comes in determined, if this team comes in determined tonight to have the advantage in this series. How much could that play? And what is the breakdown right now in your mind when it comes to MVP? Is it these two and Durant, these two and Durant and LeBron? I mean, what's sort of the MVP talk right now in your mind?
I think last time we went on Thunder Thursday, I had Harden as the MVP and then Russell second. I think right now it's those two guys along with a LeBron or Durant. Harden and Westbrook obviously have the eye-popping stats. I look at this game and these series of games with Thunder Rockets as these are character building games for the Thunder, and they can get character building wins off of these games, and I think that first win against the Rockets at home was a big one. You point to games like the win against the Clippers on the road, even the win against the Knicks on the road. You think about these marquee road wins that the Thunder have had this year, and they haven't had a ton of them, but those are the kind of wins that you look back on and you say, oh yeah, that's where they really made a mark and they really stood out and kind of bore down and got a tough win in a tough environment. So not so much from an MVP race importance. I don't think this game has significant importance to sway people's votes or people's thought in the MVP race. But for the Thunder themselves, I think this is a really big, mental character building kind of game coming to Houston, winning on the second night of a back-to-back, or at least playing well on the second night of a back-to-back.
Barry, if you had to cast an MVP vote right now, would one of these two guys get your vote?
Yes.
Which one?
It's not Westbrook. I don't understand the optimism over Westbrook's candidacy. He's playing phenomenally. He's having a historic season, but so is James Harden. And Harden's team is 26-9 or 27, whatever they are. They're on a 60-win pace. And don't look now, but Houston wasn't any good last year. Mm-hmm. They had a down year, so it's not like Harden was part of a great team and just kept it going. So I think Harden is the leader in the club, not in the clubhouse, but he's the leader at the turn for MVP.
Let me throw a wrinkle at you. It's called averaging a triple-double. And if one guy does that and his team wins 50 games and the other guy doesn't do it and his team wins 60, you're going to see a real close race.
Well, we might. I can tell you this. I don't think the Big O won MVP in 1962.
All right, interesting stuff. Hey, we're doing Thunder Thursday here from the Oklahoma newsroom. Just a couple more minutes, a couple more topics. Guys, some all-star voting came out today. Eric mentioned it before. Is there going to be peace in the West forged by James Harden? We don't know. But voting we at least have some early voting when it comes to fan voting. Brett, what stood out to you as you looked at that today?
Well, the thing that jumps out at you is that two guards are ahead of Russell Westbrook. So if you're going to have a starting spot in the All-Star game, you got to be one of the top two guards. Steph Curry and James Harden are those top 2 guards right now. So right now in the fan voting, and remember, this is early fan voting. It's the first week of fan voting is all that was released today. And there's also this year an element of player vote and media vote, which is new, 25% each. Fan vote is worth 50%. Fans get a tie-breaking vote. But right now, Russell Westbrook, for all this historic start, the historic numbers, would not be a starter in the All-Star game if the voting was, ended today.
Yeah. Does that change, Eric, in your mind? Do the fans change that by the end of voting?
I think it'll probably get to a point where Westbrook will end up jumping Steph Curry. Now, Steph Curry is wildly popular, but in terms of, the way that the voting's being dispersed now, maybe Westbrook can squeeze in there and start with Harden. It'd be fascinating to see three former teammates in the same starting lineup of Westbrook, Harden, and Durant, which is what I'd love to see, because I want to see those guys on the court, and I want to see James Harden be the proverbial peacemaker between those guys, which is going to happen. But it's going to be close. It's going to be interesting to see. The thing that stood out to me the most was there's like Giannis mania going on in the league right now. Giannis is about 1,000 votes behind Russell Westbrook in terms of the fan vote. And this guy's 22 years old. He played really well against the Thunder a couple nights ago for the Bucks in that win. So we're seeing this surge of Giannis mania. I'm not even going to try to say his last name right now because I'm a little scrambled from this trip. But
Antetokounmpo.
Antetokounmpo. Antetokounmpo. Kostas Papanikolaou. I just feel like saying that. But yeah, Giannis is 1,000 votes behind Russ. That's fascinating to me. It's going to be interesting to see how the voting plays out.
Barry, when you talk about Harden and Curry being ahead of Westbrook, I think that Eric's probably right that Harden will get ahead of one of those guys. But you look at Curry and the Warriors fan base that has just exploded around the country. Then you think about the Rockets, and they have that Yao Ming factor still. A lot of fans overseas of the Rockets. Maybe it doesn't happen. Is Russ a reserve at the All-Star game? And does it matter, I guess, is the other thing.
I bet it matters to Russ. I think he's going to be hard-pressed to get to the top 2. I mean, Curry's wildly popular. Harden's wildly popular. Now, I think, he's got a chance, but, I think one of those guys is going to get left out. I personally think the whole All-Star voting, if you're going to do a format like this, the top 5 ought to just go. I mean, nobody's playing positions anyway. It's the dumbest thing of all time.
Yeah.
Why are we putting, 3 front court players? And there's guys you don't even know if they are front court players or not. So, I don't know why you just don't pick the top 5 vote getters and make them the All-Stars. But I think it's going to be pretty dicey for Westbrook. And I vote that one of you two gets to break it to Russ if he doesn't break into the starting lineup.
My guess is that he will get the media and player vote. Mm-hmm. I would bet that he and Harden win those 2 votes. But if it's a tiebreaker situation, fans still get the tiebreaker.
Right. And by the way, leading vote getter right now in the All-Star fan voting, some guy named Kevin Durant. All right.
Leading Western vote getter.
Oh.
Sorry, LeBron James is the leading vote getter. But yeah, in the Durant-Westbrook feud, the All-Star voting fans right now coming down on the side of Kevin.
Here's the good news. If Durant starts and Westbrook doesn't, that means that whoever's coaching the West, I assume it'll be Steve Kerr, he can alternate them where they're never on the bench at the same time. So you don't have any personal interaction that would be unpleasant to whoever it might be unpleasant to.
That's a work setting. They're work friends.
Russell Westbrook throwing basketballs at random people. Anyway, lastly, before we get out of here, campaign making a march back to get back to the Thunder. Eric, he's with the Blue. Hasn't played at home, I don't believe yet. They've been on the road. But what's been the reports? What are the Thunder saying about his progress and just what they've seen out of him to this point?
Well, Billy Donovan said he basically just wants him to go down there and play. Not really looking for anything in particular or sending him down there with a mission. First game, he was jacking shots. He was probably about I think he was like 5 of 18 or 5 of 17 or something like that. He showed some good creation. We know he's got great vision at the point guard spot. He had 3 nice assists, hit a couple of jumpers, really started getting comfortable with himself in the second half of that first game with his driving. But there's no timetable for his return. The Thunder has a home game on Saturday against Denver, which could be an interesting debut for Payne. But that's also a Blue home game that night as well. which could be another game for him to get some more work, which would be his third game in the D-League this week. So basically what Payne is, they don't really say, they're not really telling him hurry on back. They're telling him to take his time and get to where he feels comfortable, and they're collaborating on when he can come back, and Payne is giving him as much information as possible too.
Yeah, and I guess the question becomes, Brett, once he does make his return, does he automatically get into that number 2 point guard spot, or does he have to sort of work in, or what's sort of the sense of how he will roll back into the lineup?
Well, Samaje Christian's been pretty good, and he's not going to just knock him totally out of the rotation, I don't think. What you're going to see, Eric and I both had the pleasure of watching the Blue via Facebook the other night.
What an interesting way to watch basketball.
Yeah. And Cam Payne, he looks very rusty. There's a reason he's doing this instead of jumping straight back into the NBA. It's going to take him a little bit of time. So I think as he comes back, as you see him transition from the Blue to the Thunder, you're going to see his minutes be pretty limited. I would be surprised if there's not some sort of number that they throw out. We're not going to play him more than X amount. Not necessarily that he can't do it, but I do think his conditioning won't be where, say, Victor Oladipo's was. He couldn't do all the same things conditioning-wise. So he's going to ease his way in, I'm sure, once he gets back with the Thunder. So I don't think you'll see him be just this clear-cut second-string point guard who supplants Samaje Christian immediately.
Well, Barry, I think everybody's in agreement. There will be a time that Cam Payne has to go through to get back to a top-notch level, whatever that may be. But whenever he gets there, what could that mean for this team? Best case scenario, he really evolves, comes along. Just what kind of impact could that have for this team?
I hate to throw a wet blanket, but I think it's going to be minimal. I mean, we're talking about a guy that wasn't in the rotation down the stretch last season. We're talking about a rookie who hasn't played a ton. Played little last year, hadn't played any this year. His development's going to be slow. His evolution as an NBA player has been stagnant because of injuries and playing time. So he'll help. It always helps to get all your guys back. He's a better shooter than Samaje Christian, much better ball handler. The second-team offense might run a little bit better, but he's not as good a defender. So I don't know that any tangible benefits are going to be seen. He clearly can create his shot much better than Christian, and there's, 2 guys on the team that can really do that, Oladipo and Westbrook. So that'll help some. But when we say Cam Payne can create his shots, that's not – there's not Kemba Walker we're talking about. It's Cameron Payne.
Yeah. All right, guys, lastly, Eric, I have a question for you. If no Patrick Beverley in the starting lineup tonight for the Rockets, do you think he'll wear the librarian sweater again tonight?
He better. I mean, I'll be in the building, and I think he looks rather nice in it. I did a story on Patrick. I should be on good terms with him, so I should feel perfectly comfortable requesting that from him now.
Now, I do have to say, there was a little bit of a dust-up when you did that story, right, Eric? Don't bury the lead.
Okay, yeah, you know what? He came at me a little bit. He thought I was trying to bait him into a question. But afterwards, we had a talk before the game. He said it was cool. He just had a moment where he thought I was trying to catch him in a Westbrook Patrick Beverley kind of feud thingy, and that was not the case. We're still cool. We're still cool on cardigans. We're still cool on everything else.
Did James Harden have anything to do with making peace between the Oklahoman and Patrick Beverley?
I need to bring James in next time. James is like the international olive branch, a big hairy olive branch to every NBA beef. We should just throw him in the middle of all NBA beef, and everybody else will come out together singing Kumbaya.
Well, we got James the Beard Harden against Eric the Beard Horn here, folks. It could be a great night in Houston. We'll be watching. We're guessing you will be too. But be sure to stay with the best coverage team anywhere at newsok.com and every day in the Oklahoman.